Hey everybody, I just finished recording my April 2023 safety meeting that I do as a service to my members, to my mid-level members and above, typically people that have their own authority. And after recording it, I just felt so strongly that the second half mostly of what I talked about should be something that most people should hear. So as a thank you to just all my viewers and people that support the channel in general, I'm just going to release this one to everybody. And you know, the members that pay for it, I sincerely appreciate it, and you will continue to get yours monthly um, as a service that you pay for. But I just wanted to get this one out and just say thank you to everybody that supports the channel, and I hope it has some valuable information in it for you. Everybody have a great day. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the what is it? What month is this? April? March? April? April 2023 safety meeting, I guess. Thanks for being a member. I do this as a service to the members of the channel at the DIY level and above to help be compliant. If you have your own authority, you are required to have at least 2 safety meetings per year, and attending here can help you meet that qualification. If you are ever questioned of, hey, where's your safety meeting attendance, just contact me, and I'll vouch for you that you were here. I'll leave a comment below the video so that you can show you were in attendance. Maybe put the date in there, however you want to do it. It's one of the big overlooked things. They don't necessarily question it in your new entrant audit, but should you ever get audited later, you want to be able to show you're fully compliant. And I tell you what, if you're a one truck guy and you do actually do safety meetings, they will be impressed because hardly anybody does it. So that being said, I just do this as a perspective. I'm talking directly to my drivers. So this month, I want to talk more about the hours of service exemption for adverse weather conditions, because every month I get literature from my insurance company. I'll never switch insurance companies voluntarily because this insurance company goes extra far to make sure that you're doing things right and being compliant. And I know for a fact that not all of them do it because I've had other insurance companies. So I want to read some literature that they sent this month, or maybe it was last month and I'm just getting to it, about the adverse conditions exception again. And I'm just going to read it out of here. Part of this, you might not like it, but it's something I hadn't really considered that much. It says, according to 49 CFR, the rule allows a driver to have extra time to complete their day after encountering unexpected delays caused by weather or traffic. A driver may extend both driving and on-duty limits by 2 hours. This is a change from the old rule, which permitted drivers to extend their driving limit, not their on-duty limit. Truck drivers are subject to the 14-hour limit, will be most affected by the change. So what they're saying is, now you can go up to 16. It doesn't affect your on-duty. You do 13 driving and 16 on duty for the adverse conditions. But, okay, let's go back to it. So, what's the benefit of the new rule? With the expanded hours, more drivers will be eligible to use the exception to wait out unexpected weather or traffic conditions. That word unexpected is key here, all right? It says rather than trying to race the clock to complete the run. Drivers will have an added cushion of on-duty time when using the exception. All driving, up to 13 hours for truck drivers, will need to be done within 16 consecutive hours for truck drivers. So basically they're saying instead of 11 and 14, it becomes 13 and 16. But now, this literature here comes from one of their risk control representatives. Now, it's his job to know these laws inside and out. So I'm going to take what they're saying as very, very accurate because they deal with these lawsuits all the time, okay? It says, note that the allowable uses of this exception remain relatively narrow. See the definition of adverse driving conditions in 395.2 of the Green Book. So remember that 395.2 of the Green Book will tell you what are adverse driving conditions. It says motor carriers are obligated to make sure the adverse conditions were unknowable at the time of dispatch. So if you left out knowing you were going into a snowstorm, technically you are not eligible for adverse driving conditions. You might not like that, but that is how the law is written. It says unknowable. So if you knew about it before you left or left the truck stop to go on your trip there, technically you are not eligible to use adverse conditions. So, wink, wink, I would say, I didn't know it was going to snow. You're going to have to. You can't, don't slip up and say, yeah, I knew the weather was bad. Because if you say something like that, they could say, oh, you mean that you knew about it? Then you're not technically eligible. Words matter sometimes. Where did I leave off here? Motor carriers and drivers should check traffic and weather conditions before starting a run. Now, this is important. Motor carriers should make sure drivers are aware they cannot use this exception for routine traffic or weather delays. Well, what are routine traffic delays? That means if you know you're going through Atlanta in rush hour or Chicago in rush hour and you get held up, that is not legitimately adverse traffic conditions. You can reasonably expect that during rush hour in a major city that you're going to have traffic delays. Okay? Now, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just going by what this is specifically how the rule is written. Okay? The delay must be unexpected and it cannot be due to normal rush hour traffic, vehicle breakdowns. See, that one I wasn't completely sure of. Loading or unloading delays, which, yes, we do know about that, or the ability to find parking. Now, loading or unloading delays or the inability to find parking is a legitimate use of personal conveyance. If you're leaving a shipper and you need to go find a place to park, the nearest place to park, that is legitimate use of PC. The inability to find parking, you document it and you move to the next closest place to find parking. If you cannot find parking there, you document it and you move to the next closest place. Now, be careful that you're not using this to advance the load. If the nearest parking spot is in the other direction, technically the letter of the law says you're supposed to go that way. Okay? They're starting to get really picky on these things. I know somebody that got a falsification because of this circumstance, and it wasn't really, he thought he was doing it right. He wasn't willfully trying to skirt the law. Okay? Overall, this exception is rare to use. So if you're using it all the time, they're going to call it habitual, and they'll probably ping you for that. Motor carriers may not qualify to use the adverse driving conditions exception, or may not, okay. If the motor carrier feels it has received the violation incorrectly, it has the option to submit a data queue. However, before submitting the data queue, consider the following. Did the driver note the exception on the log? So there we go, document, right? And did the driver pass other available parking locations? So if you get into adverse conditions and you say, oh, I have 2 more hours I can drive, that can get me, instead of stopping in Des Moines, I can make it to Davenport. Well, no. You are still required to attempt to park at the next available parking. Okay? It's just not an automatic 2-hour leeway to motor on down the road. It used to say in the law, to complete your trip or to complete your run. It doesn't say that anymore. You're technically supposed to park at the nearest available parking. And the third thing is, was the motoring public warned of the incident before encountering the slowdown? Well, there's all kinds of weather alerts all over the TV and the radio and on overhead signs. It says, hey, you're in Colorado, winter weather advisory, chain law, whatever. You're technically notified, right? Now, you can play dumb, say you didn't see that. I mean, that's kind of your only hope. But if they're in a pissy mood, they're going to get you. They're going to get you. So that's something I wanted to read about that. And then make sure you log it correctly. One thing it doesn't mention here, and I talked about it before, is do you switch it into PC or do you keep it on the drive line and let it go red? Well, there should be a thing in your ELD for adverse conditions. Learn how to use it. It might let your line go red, but then after your break, it should just change it back to non-violation if you have it in there for the adverse conditions exception. Learn how your ELD works. I imagine they're all going to be a little bit different. I haven't used every ELD on the market. Call the company and ask them. Make sure you log it correctly. All right, enough about that. The other thing I want to talk about is something that I learned from personal experience many, many years ago. I haven't seen anything in the Code of Regulations on it or the Green Book, but it's kind of one of those sayings, cover your ass, right? And what I'm talking about is, years ago, I had a very, very close friend have a fatality accident. Now, he was not in any way ruled to be at fault, but it still doesn't mean that they didn't try. They impounded his truck. He never did get his truck back. They kept his truck forever because they pretty much tore it apart in the investigation. And one of the things they asked for that we can learn from is, here, let me give you an example, okay? These things right here, prescription medications. Now, these aren't all, some vitamins and stuff. I'm not on a handful of pills every day, but prescription medications. All right. Now, you are allowed to have prescription medications in the truck while you're driving, blah, blah, blah. But the key is they cannot be known to cause, what do they call it? Not fatigue, drowsiness, I guess, whatever we want to call it. They looked at this, okay? The guy was on like blood pressure medication maybe, and something for cholesterol, I guess. So a way to handle that, and this is what I do, I insist on this for myself. I need to start being more strict on it. Being on a prescription medication, when I go for the physical, on the long form physical, I make the doctor write. Now, I do this for medications. Look at this. This is vitamin D3. This is vitamin B12. Okay. When I get a headache, I like to take Advil. Everything I am known to routinely use, prescription and non-prescription, we make a list on my long form physical. And it says this medication or drug, whatever you want to call it, is not known or will not cause drowsiness. Drowsiness, that's the word I'm looking for. Drowsiness. I want in writing from my doctor that this medication or supplement, vitamin, whatever, will not cause drowsiness. This is something they went through with him with a fine tooth comb. This accident was kind of a big deal. And like I said, they tore the truck. They were dying for a reason to blame it on him because the person that died, their family was all up in their ass. Okay, so that's a way to protect yourself. I don't know why more places aren't doing it, but it's kind of one of those things. Cover your ass. Cover every base, right? You don't want to give them a reason to. They have enough reasons to pick you apart and look at you, but and then make sure legitimately that you're not taking anything that could possibly cause drowsiness. And if you have prescription pills, I had somebody travel with me once as a rider, and he was diabetic. He was on medications. I says, those medications stay in the bottle with your name on them. You do not take a pill out of the bottle and put it in your pocket, or we can be in trouble. Those medications need to stay in their labeled packaging with your name and prescription number on it. If you use a pill organizer, that can be a problem. I'm just telling you straight up. So be careful how you handle medications and items like that in the truck. You don't have to have permission to have vitamins. You don't have to have permission to have most of these different things. But what you want to make sure is that it is pointed out specifically that they do not cause drowsiness. Chances are 99,999 people out of 1 million, this will never be a problem for. But if you ever have a fatality or a very serious accident, they're coming for you. And they're coming for everything they can possibly get their hands on. That's one thing I took away from, or one of the many things I took away from somebody very close to me having a very serious accident, is cover your ass at every turn. And being non-compliant and risking whatever is most times not worth it. Now, he came away with it clean. It was legitimately not his fault. It was, I ain't gonna get into it, but it changed his life forever, and it was a long time before the dude could sleep again. He was an absolute mess, and he's a dear friend of mine. So it's sad to see that happen to anybody. But let's learn from it. If there's anything good that can come from something like that, is the rest of us learn how to handle that situation. And I'm here to tell you, if you have a serious accident like that, shut your damn mouth. Nobody is your friend. The cops are not your friend. The only person you talk to is your company or your insurance company, not the other one. And you be careful what you say to your insurance company. Not a bad idea to get a lawyer immediately, even if it was no way, shape, or form your fault. So hopefully none of that will ever happen to any of us. But if it does, please be careful. Please be smart. All right, we're getting a little long here today. I'm gonna cut it short at that. Everybody take care, and we will see you next time.